Hello everyone, welcome to the Social Agency Hangout. This week we're discussing sourcing on Twitter, live and uncut, or Twitter stalking as Bill likes to call it. We have myself, Louis Welcomme, this Hangout sponsored by Colleague Software. We're joined also this week by Mark Stevens. Mark's the founder of the Technology and Recruitment Alliance and is also founder of the F10 Recruitment Agency Group. We've also got Bill Boorman here, the founder of the True Unconferences, social recruiting expert, and so forth, etc., etc. Firstly, I'd just like to ask Mark to quickly say a bit more about himself and about TIRA, who's supporting the Hangout this week.
Hi. Yeah, TIRA was an idea that I had to bring together a number of businesses operating in the recruitment space to work together to communicate to the recruitment audience, both agency side and client side, through each of the different channels, which includes social media channels. So we're very interested to understand how we can use Twitter better for our own purposes and for the people that we work with.
Okay. And you're saying earlier, Mark, really it's about trying to get some obviously practical use from this for the recruiter.
Yeah, I think probably I'm a good representative of the recruitment industry. We're trying to use Twitter, but we're struggling to understand where the value is, where the return on investment is, and if we can get any ideas on how we can become more efficient with it, then that would be great.
Just to say, I hope everyone's getting the right view here. The screen you're meant to be seeing is Bill's screen, not Bill's face, Bill's tweet deck. He's going to be using that to explain a bit about Twitter sourcing to us. If you're not getting the right screen, if you want to comment, if you want to contribute, can you please tweet hashtag social agency on Twitter? And I think you can do that on LinkedIn now, Bill, can't you?
You can, yeah. That's not quite gonna be up yet. But what
Right.
hashtag are we using today, Louis? Just so I know what's the hashtag for this show.
Hashtag social agency, as always.
Okay, let's pick it up and then let's get started. Okay, Mark and Louis and anyone else listening in. Thanks for listening in. You should now be able to see on your screen 4 screens along the bottom, one which has got me and I'm waving, and you've also got Louis and Mark looking in intently from the F10 group and TIRA and trying to figure out a little bit more about Twitter, which is not an unusual question for people to ask, I think, particularly recruiters, as to how do we actually get something back out of this, especially given that it's 140 characters. We're using the hashtag social agency. Please use that to tweet out, or you can tweet me directly. If you tweet me on @BillBoorman, you will appear on the show. You will appear on the screen, so you'll have the opportunity to jump in. But I want to start off just talking a little bit about Twitter. I'm gonna actually move along so you haven't got the live screen in your view, because that's going to be a little bit off-putting. Let's put it there. Let's talk a little bit about how you actually source for people. Okay, the number one use for me for Twitter is as a stalking channel. I think it is the best channel. I think it is the best channel for actually being able to observe and look at what people are doing and actually get a handle on that. So, hi Richard, I can see you looking in. I've just seen you ping up. So, thanks for the message. Yeah, good to see you watching that. Perhaps you might want to send out the link for other people to jump in. This really is live when we've got messages pinging up, and you can see that. So, what do we mean by actually by stalking? In how do we actually watch people? There's some major underused aspects of Twitter from a recruiting and sourcing point of view. The first one is, how do you actually find people? How do you find people? And the way in which we find people is through content. So what I'm looking for content is words which people are, by content, is what I call geek words. So Geek words are those words or phrases that one professional would use with another in order to identify who they are. If you search for bios, and I don't know, Mark, you tell me, give me an example of something you might recruit, somebody you might recruit for a particular job type.
Project program management, systems engineers.
A project programs manager or systems engineer. If you're searching for a systems engineer or project program manager and you put it in the search bar in TweetDeck or Twitter, almost certainly what you're going to end up with is recruiters who recruit project program managers or systems engineers, because that seems to be the only people who actually live in social media. So what we need is a word or a phrase which one project program manager might say to another, which would help to identify them. So yeah, Recruitment Geek, thanks for your help earlier with that bit of content stealing. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Mark, if you could just tell me what was the if you want to jump in, give me an example of a word. Hi, Alan, I can see you've just tuned in. So
hello, Alan.
Mark, give me an example of a word or phrase which might be unique between one project manager and another that you might be recruiting for.
Oh dear, crikey, you put me on the spot. I can't really think. You know, what would they be asking each other about? You know,
what would they be talking about?
Update,
So, you know,
project. What about reviews? Project review date.
Probably not project review date, because that's going to be somewhere else. So let's see if anyone else on Twitter, anyone who does any technical recruiting, anyone who does any actual technical recruiting, can anyone else on the call give me a suggestion of a geek word, something you might want to search for, and then we can do a live search and see what we come up with. Alan, do you want to give me a term at all?
Don't know if he.
No. Okay. Well,
doesn't look at.
Well, in which case, here's one I made earlier in true Blue Peter fashion. So we'll just jump along and see. And you can see, this is my TweetDeck. You can see how many columns I have live at any one time, and the columns that I have live are anything from companies to tweets from individuals to messages from individuals. This is how we stalk people. We sort out the content that we want. The things we want to look at specifically, the people we want to look at specifically in a particular topic, and then once we've found it, you can see, for instance, here's the column by which I'm searching for my blog post. I can search for any content or follow the tweets of particular individuals by setting up columns within TweetDeck that enables me to look carefully. So if I'm searching for a particular piece of content, I might search for, let's just say, okay, let's go and say a particular conference. This was a conference a little while ago, OTAC 13, which was a conference, and I might say, right, that's the industry that I'm working in. I'm really interested in those people. I would have set up hashtag OTAC 13. Let's do it a different way and say, right, let's search for a common term, and let's say, I don't know, let's go and have a look for everyone who is using the term social recruiting. So this might be some of you. So if I put into my TweetDeck in the top the term social recruiting, if I want a specific term or phrase, I will do it in exclamation marks to make it clear. Then just press search. So what we get is we'll get a quick search of a column which brings up everybody, and then just add it as a column. This has brought up everyone who is using the hashtag for a particular hashtag, social recruiting, and I've got them all in one place. Now I've got them here. I'm saying, right, who's at this conference, who's attending this event, who's talking about this topic, who's coming up with information. I use a different application to say, right, let's find out who they are. So if I want to say, right, okay, let's have a look at it. I've gone to the name Keely Joe Frasca on the top, click on that name, and in TweetDeck I've got a little bio, so I get a small description. I'm actually saying, you know what, I'm having a look at Keely Joe. I think she's interesting, therefore I want to put her in a separate place so I can stalk on her activity, so I can see what she's doing and choose what she's doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add her to a list. I want to list her. Lists are the hidden part of TweetDeck. So how do I add someone to a list? I just go to my list and I get this, and suddenly I can see Keely Joe's list. These are all the lists of people that she has. So if I want to see, right, okay, I'm interested. She went to King's College London. Let's see who else went to King's College London that I can source. I go straight in and say, right, these are Keely's lists. Because lists
or
are
the one below it, PhD students.
PhD students, academics, photography, psychology, recruitment, and HR. Suddenly I'm able to start saying, right, here are the people, here are lists, and all the people in this list are related to that topic. So it's very easy for me to go from one person and get inside their lists, get inside their topics, get inside the people who are important to them. But I've decided, right, you know what? I keep my own lists. I actually want to create a list to say, right, let's create a list. What list? So let's create a list, and we do it as simple as this. It says the account Bill Boorman. I'm going to put in, I'm going to call this list Social Recruiting Geeks. Let's just call it that. And then give it a little description. I might, when it's a private list, I'll usually put in people I want to headhunt who work at Dell, or people who I want to headhunt who work at Oracle, or whatever I'm doing. And I've got two choices. You'll see at the bottom. I can either make this list public, or I can make this list private. If I make it public, if I add you to the list, you get a notification to say you've been added to Bill Boorman's list. Because it's a search list, I want to make it private, so I've called it private. Therefore, I can say anything I want. So let's just say freaky geeky folk. And that creates my list. I then save it, and then suddenly we have a problem saving the list, but I think that's because I haven't added anyone to it yet, so that's fine. We've created a new list. Let's try it on the public setting. We create a new list, and we can start, once we have a list, we can start adding people to that list. Right, let's turn it off for a second. So we've created lists that we can add people to. I can see Alan's on. Alan, I know the camera's not on me, which is fine, because I want people looking at the screen. So tweet on the screen, the other one's just open so you can see me. If I want to add someone to a list, I've got some choices in my TweetDeck. I can say, right, okay, we're looking at social recruiting. Let's go and add them to one of my lists. Here is my list. I've got some choices. I've got some choices to do more things. You can start to see what I can do. I can tweet directly to Keely Joe because she's interesting. I can follow Keely Joe, send a direct message, or this one down here, I can add or remove from a list. So suddenly I've got my list to say, you know what? I'm going to put her in my. I'm going to put in a new list of Keely Joe. So let's create a list for her, and let's just say. Same thing again. Social recruiting. I've got a name in it. So now I can press save and
you might maybe you've got too many lists, Bill. Could be a limitation.
Yeah, that may well be a problem. So so then I start to create lists, or I can add her, or I can of course add her to one of my which is pretty easy to do. So the next thing I can do is jump in and say, you know what, I'm going to add her to it. I'm going to add her to an existing list. So how do I what I would then do is jump in and suddenly jump back and add her to an existing list. Now that's fairly easy. That's fairly easy for me to do. I've added her onto an existing list. I could just go straight into a list and add her. and make a decision that actually what we want to do is add her to a list. Once I've got people in, once I've got her in the list, that's right, Aaron, you're quite correct. 500 people per list. I see your point. It's too damn manual. We're going to come on to that in a minute because you can use Social Bro to do that. But my personal choice is to manually create lists, and the reason I want to manually create, the reason I want to be manually creating lists is if I'm able to manually create lists, I can then start adding the people that I want to. And I think, yeah, Recruitment Geek, you've jumped in and helped me out with that. The issue is that there's an in the name, so let's give that a go. Let's give that a go and see if that fixes it in terms of the list. Let's just go and say bright.com. Let's put them in a list and see what we get. So all we need to do for that is actually go into this little bar here in TweetDeck. Now, once we've got a list, what can we actually do with lists? What we can do with our list once we're doing that, if we want to create new people on a new list, is we can take a list and embed it in a TweetDeck column. So if we have a list and we're saying, right, okay, I want to create a new column, all I need to do is say, right, what shall we do? Add a column. So I've pressed add a column here. What do I want to make that column of? I want to make it of lists. What are my lists? This list is one of people I recommend. I just double click on that, add it as a column, and then once I'm adding it as a column, you can see we've created a column of people who I recommend. So I'm beginning to be able to organize people by whatever listing that I want and put them in one place. The reason I want to put them in one place is because I never want to be missing a tweet from any one of these individuals. I always want to be going back. Equally, I want to be able to go into anyone and say, you know what, I want to find out who this person is and what they're all about. Now, there's another way of actually stalking people. I'm going to give you a real practical application in a minute that tells you exactly how it works. Another application to use, which I think you would have heard about before, is this Falcon application. The Falcon application. Falcon enables me to profile people quite clearly. If I'm going, right, okay, Susan Avello, wonder who Susan Avello is, straight away I'm just hovering over her name. Let's see the kind of information I can get back from her. Think about it. If I'm sourcing someone, it's just a name in Twitter. I've seen them in a conference. I've seen them using a geek word. I've seen them using some technology that I'm saying, you know what, they're quite interesting. I'm getting information up. I'm getting Susan's Twitter bio. I've got a link to her Facebook, so I can view her feed direct from here. I've got her Foursquare, so I can go and have a look at her on Foursquare and see the places that she goes and the things that she does. I've got her clout. I can see that she typically talks about social media, human resources, blogging, Facebook, marketing, and I've got the address of her blog, which is HR Virtual Cafe. So just from finding somebody on one tweet, on one topic, or through one piece of content, I'm able to jump back, pick up and say, look at her specifically, go into my Twitter, look at her on Falcon. I'm able to say, right, let's connect with her on Facebook. Let's go and have a look at her Google Plus account. This is her Foursquare. I can start seeing the places she's going. I'm beginning to build up intelligence very quickly from somebody that I've found. Now, I want to give you an example of how we use this information. One of the other things that we do in lists is create lists from LinkedIn profiles. 40% of LinkedIn profiles contain a Twitter name. While it's a manual process, you can create a list from Twitter of all the C+ programmers who work at Dell in, for example, Dublin, put them all in a list, put that list in a column in TweetDeck, and begin to follow that. So if you're following their behaviours...
Is that taking them from LinkedIn, is it, Bill? Did you say?
Yeah, taking their Twitter handles from LinkedIn,
right? Okay, and
adding them to a list on Twitter. A little bit of a manual process, but really worth doing. Either once, because once you've got them, once you've got all those people in one place, you can look at the content they're sharing, you can look at what they're liking, you can look at what they're talking about, what's popular for them, what's not popular for them. You can even look at their Foursquare and their check-ins. When we did this for a particular customer, and we started looking at the behaviour of programmers, we came up with 2 topics which they talked about the most. What do you think they were, Louis or Mark? Mark, what do you think programmers talk about the most
Sex
in
and
Twitter?
drinking.
Sex and drinking. Coffee.
Probably. Staying up all night, programming them all.
Yeah, coffee and Family Guy. Coffee and Family Guy were the 2 most popular topics. So
I got one of them right.
Right. So what we were able to do with the coffee was actually say, right, okay, let's check, because the other thing that programmers always do is they check in at places. Let's check where they're checking in and let's have a look at it. We were able to see that they used a particular Starbucks. We knew which coffee they ordered. We knew roughly what time. All the programmers who worked at one particular company. We were able to take out an advert on the bus stop outside of that Starbucks and pinpoint, say, tired of your job, come and have a coffee. And put the 3 coffees which we knew were most popular with them, the Java and the Macchiato, and put it all up in one place, say, come and talk to us. A nice little QR code so you could scan it. And that was a really successful hiring campaign. So we can start looking at people and saying, you know what, we can get inside what people are talking about. Another organisation that I know very well were able to identify something they never would have done. The favourite character of programmers from Family Guy, and used that character in their direct advertising through Facebook and other channels to say, we know that our audience is going to resonate that. We know the things that they're talking about. Mark, have you got any questions on this at the moment? You're the recruiter in the seat, so you're similar to a lot of people listening in. Tell us, give us some thoughts.
Recruiters, and you know, so we're very interested in developing tactics and strategies to build up vertical lists of people that are relevant to the marketplace that these guys work in. So I'm already seeing where there might be some value here in populating one of these vertical lists of people with specific skills, and then just tracking them and following them, and I'm sure that would in turn create its opportunities. I think the biggest fear for me was... Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I think the biggest fear for me...
What were you going to say?
Is, you know, what is the return on investment? You know, is there some true value in putting the time into creating this? You know, is there going to be the output at the end of it? I can see that this is worth trialing, definitely, and it's the first time I've seen something in Twitter that has inspired me to want to go and try something specifically for recruiting and sourcing candidates.
Let me ask you a question. If you hire you hire project programmers on one of your desks, right? And if I said to you, there is a networking event 24 hours a day in which only project programmers are attending and talking, would you be interested in your recruiters going there, or would you consider it a waste of time?
On the face of it, I would say yes, go and have a look. It's just like any event. But like everything that you do, you've got to measure it and make sure that you're getting the value out of it. Now, that might come down to the individual, not utilising the event effectively, but yes, in answer to your question. Yeah,
Louis, you might want to jump in, and I appreciate it's a different vertical in that you're selling recruitment software, but tell us how you, because you've heard me do this before, tell us how you're using it and what you're finding.
Well, yeah, I use TweetDeck as well to manage my Twitter lists. Started by just putting out a lot of content on Twitter and following a lot of people. Gradually got around to this use of lists in the manner that you're describing.
So what sort of lists would you have, Louis?
The lists I've been, well, customers, recruiters, and then I've been putting PR people, that kind of thing. But now I'm getting down to more specifics, really. I've been looking at decision makers, so I've been creating lists of managers, directors, marketing people in, obviously, our target market's recruitment. So by getting a more focused list, I'm then able to engage with them, build relationships, share information more effectively. So I think I'm guessing that's where you're coming from, Bill, when it comes to
well, I do. I think it's also quite obvious. The real return comes from the return on irrelevance. It becomes from the conversations that lead to relationships. Now, I understand that if you're running a recruitment desk, you're saying, yeah, but we don't just want to chat with anyone. We don't just want to go in and talk to anybody about anything. We want to make sure we're having conversations with the right people. And then once we have those conversations, we're not too worried about what that content is, what they're talking about, as long as we're building relationships. And I think if you know, what we've found is if you know that everybody is a C++ programmer in a particular list, then you don't have a worry about talking to them about the X Factor on a Friday night if that's what people are talking about. Because networking hasn't really changed. And networking, whether you're online or offline, is not any different. The real strength of Twitter for recruiters is Twitter is the introduction channel. Once you've segmented your audience, you know who people are. Twitter is the channel where you talk to strangers, where you're made welcome, where people will start to talk to you.
I'd agree with it. I think people's I don't know if this is the right word, but people are far more willing to talk to you on Twitter. I think if you approached a programmer perhaps on LinkedIn directly with a random message or a greeting, you might get shunned pretty quickly. I don't know if that's the case, Bill or Mark, if you've had that experience.
I think with LinkedIn in particular, you have to be adding value. Otherwise, you just seem an idiot in a room full of people that are there for a specific reason, and you just stand out like a sore thumb. So I can see the advantage of this is that you can create your own groups with people that you want to communicate with, and they don't actually have to be together or part of the same network. You're actually creating your own network from all the people that you want to follow.
Yeah, plus...
Would you do me a favour? Because I'm not using TweetDeck. So I'm sure there's lots of other people out there that aren't using TweetDeck. So if we were starting it, I mean, TweetDeck, is it easy to download and to start using? And
you could download it in 2 ways, or 3 ways actually. It's a phone application. You can download it onto desktop. You can go into things like you can go into you can use it as a Chrome extension. I use it as a Chrome extension, so I start it straight off my Chrome browser because it uses less power. So I've got that from the Chrome web shop. That is, if you're using Chrome, there's a ton of ways to do it, and it takes you all you need is a Twitter account to actually install it. So you can jump in with Twitter, install it, and away you go.
And it is free. It is free.
So what would you? So you've gone through the pain barrier now of working out how it works. So fast track us all to sort of setting this up and establishing some basics here, so that we get straight into doing stuff that's meaningful.
Absolutely right. So you could start grouping people together. The key point for me is once you've got them, why I'm talking about TweetDeck, why I like TweetDeck. It could be Hootsuite. You know, other people use Hootsuite, which is a similar application. Is that I'm able to organise the conversations that I want to follow. So, you know, obviously my event's True London. I want to know if anyone's talking about True London. I want to be there to actually see that. So I've got a column set up for True London. Every time I go back, I don't have to be on there 24 hours a day. Every time I go back in, I can look at a topic. As a recruiter, what am I searching for? I'm searching for geek words. Geek words are the things that are of interest to me. Geek words are the unique words that one person who does a job will say to another. Because in the same way as they would say it almost as a secret code in person when they're out, they'll also tweet it to each other. So one programmer will tweet something to another, which identifies them as actually being a programmer. So I think so how do you actually engage, Richard? I'm going to
there's a few questions coming in about, and I guess what Mark's saying, once you've got these lists, and I know we said, but before we start this hangout, we said we're going to focus just on sourcing, just on stalking.
No, we don't need to, Louis. So let's forget about
let's talk about engagement a bit. What do you do now once you've got the lists? So how do you recruit them?
How do you turn them into candidates?
Yeah.
Stop thinking of them as candidates and clients and start thinking of them as people. How do you have a conversation with someone? You know, if you're capable, what do you do whenever anyone meets? When anyone ever meets to network in any kind of networking event, you go through the period of what I call the network dance. It's when you're both talking around trying to find a mutual topic, and what you're actually interested in doing is, okay, let's have a conversation with you. Now, if I know what you're talking about, I can start to look to see what is it we have in common. So there's two ways I can do that. One is I can put all of your Twitter feed through an application called Tagzedo. Very simple application, Tagzedo. Tagzedo will turn any Twitter feed into a cloud, which tells me these are the topics which you talk about most. These are the things you're most interested in. So very easy for me then to say, right, if this is what you're most interested in, this is what you're most like. What do we have in common? Where's the common ground? Do we follow the same football team? Do we like the same programs? Do we go to the same places? We're looking for a mutual ground on which to start the conversation. And your first approach is really about that. Go back through, if you go to somebody's Twitter line, so if I said, right, okay, I want to start a conversation with, let's say, Susan Avello, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Susan's profile. And I'm going to say, actually, I want to see her full profile. Just by clicking on this, this brings me to her tweet line, and we'll see that up in a minute. I want to go to her full profile so I see everything. Once I've got that, I can start running back through her timeline to say, right, these are all the things Susan's been tweeting about, right? And it could be anything. I could say, let's say, checklist, 3 life lessons that led to social media success. And I could just say, you know what? That's something I can comment on. I can either share it, which means hitting the retweet button. She's going to come back to me and say, thanks for sharing thanks for sharing my post. I'm going to go back to her and say, more than welcome. That was a great post. Whereabouts you based, Susan? What are you doing? So that's a good method. Another one is I could just reply and say, I want to reply. It's come up with me. You can see reply. I
thought you were going to type lol there for a minute, Bill. I was worried.
I'm too old for lol, but there you go.
I'm glad.
I'm jumping in saying, love that post, thanks. Straight away, I actually know Susan, but Susan was a stranger. Straight away, I've got the opportunity to follow her. I have the opportunity.
It's retweeting or sharing other people's content. I'm guessing that's one of the very basic ways of, I suppose, sucking up, if that's a straight way to put it.
That's exactly the right term. Exactly the right term. So, you know, I can say, right, I want to add her to one of my lists. Let's add her to my sharers list.
I recently discovered
on my list.
I recently discovered that clout applied quite a lot of importance to retweeting in terms of establishing your level of social influence.
Yeah, it does it does a little bit. You know, how much you share and who's sharing your content and doing all that kind of thing. But I think there's less to be gained from trying to gain the clout and just thinking about, right, let's just have a conversation with people. If I identify Susan, you know, in exactly the same ways, if you went to a normal networking meeting, Mark, right? If you went to a networking meeting on a Wednesday and it was for project programmers, and you were able to identify through very early part of the conversation that Susan was a project programmer, your opening gambit isn't going to be, I've got a job, are you interested? You know, because if you walk in and do that, there's two things that, and this is kind of the naive way that we seem to think that because we're in Twitter or because we're in social media, in some way it's different to what we would do in in an in-person situation, in in-person networking. You know, if I went into this networking meeting and said, I'm a recruiter, I've got jobs, who wants to talk to me? When Susan said, who wants to talk to me? First thing she's going to do is say, actually, no, I'm not interested in talking to you, but go speak to that guy over there. When you go to speak to that guy over there, he's been unemployed for 4 years and he's desperate for a job, right? As soon as you go in and say, this is what I am and this is the job I've got, the people you get connected with have very little value to you. So what happens is you go. What happens is you go in and you look at. You look, is there a common topic? Is there something we've got in common? Is there something that we do? Now, what you make sure is you can always refer back to who you are. So that's how I'll do my first introduction. And if I identify someone that I'm thinking, yeah, that's interesting, that's who I want to talk to, I'll put them on a list so I can see their content. I might, if they're somebody that's a really hot prospect, I might even create their own Twitter list. So, for example, let's find someone who I've created a Twitter list for. I might actually, Reverend Rolls is someone who I follow, I'm quite interested in. I can build a column for, I can add a column for anyone. So let's just say I'm going to add a column for go to search. Who do I want to search for? Let's say I want to add a column for at Louis Welcomme, because he's suddenly become interesting to me for whatever reason. Yeah, that's the right Louis Welcomme. You can see the picture underneath. Press enter. I've now created a column for Louis Welcomme. So, and I've got two choices that I can create a column for his content or by people tweeting to him.
Colleague RS is a far more interesting one.
Right. So suddenly, which I can see just by going to that, there's your other account, right?
Yeah.
So I can see, do I want to follow Louis or do I want to follow his business account? So suddenly I'm saying, actually, what I want to follow, what I want to create the list for is colleague software. I'm able to create a column for colleague software. That means suddenly I'm able to see all the tweets in and all the tweets out. Let me tell you where this is really useful when it comes to stalking, Mark. If you follow all of your competitors and you create columns for your competitors, whether they are recruiters or they are corporate recruiters from companies that you might be interested in, if you follow those and you filter out the jobs, which is very easy to do in columns, you can see all the people who are talking to your competitors. Kind of like having a bug in the office of the people you're following. You can see all the conversations that you're going on. So as soon as I see anyone, if Susan Black was my competitor, for example, which I've just picked up out of Reverend Richard Cole's random thing, I'm saying, right, oh, Susan Black seems to be talking to Richard Coles. Let's see who she is and whether actually, because she's quite interesting, we want to follow her, which we can do. Do we want to add her to one of our lists? Do we want to do something with her? So, for instance, if you see someone and you hire project managers and you see somebody talking to one of your competitor companies in Milton Keynes on Twitter and they're talking about project management roles, good opportunity to get yourself in and introduce yourself. The introduction comes, again, go to their timeline, run down their timeline. What are their topics? Where can we start a conversation? Twitter is the place to talk to strangers. So how can we speak to each other and suddenly pick that up? So, Louis, what else do we have on the timeline? What other questions do we have right now?
I got one from Darren via Twitter. He was trying to get it to me. He's asking which niches are, what niches are most predominant on Twitter when it comes to candidates. And his second was a comment. He thinks Twitter's more like a resourcing tool to find decision makers to sell your services to.
No, Twitter is a resourcing tool to find everybody.
Yeah.
Right. everybody lives on Twitter, or percentage. More people live on Facebook, but people are noisier on Twitter, and they're much easier to. What you got to remember is, in Twitter, they're much easier to connect with as strangers.
Yeah, yeah. So
Right,
what are the niches? Are there areas? Do you know there's focuses on Twitter that you don't
No,
get
let
in
me
LinkedIn?
let me tell you why. Well, there's lots of niches which aren't on LinkedIn, which would be considered kind of non-professional services, like, for instance, if you worked in hospitality recruiting or something like that. But to be more specific, this is what you get on Twitter. Everybody is on Twitter, but they're not. So I've been able to find people from pretty much every sector, but they're not labeling themselves in the way they do in LinkedIn. So in LinkedIn, recruiters love it because it's very simple, because everyone's holding up a badge saying, here is my job title, here's my experience. I'm very easy to search, I'm very easy to find. In Twitter, if you were a C++ programmer, you almost definitely wouldn't put in your bio that you're a C++ programmer.
Well, that's a common thing that I've had said to me, is that Twitter profiles seem to be very weak. And
don't search profiles. Don't search profiles. Search for content. Look at the things which you need, which one person says to another if they do that business. You know, every profession, recruiters are no different. If we talk as recruiters, we will have certain words or phrases which we will extend between me, Mark, and between you, which would let you know what, I know that guy's a recruiter. We call them the geek words. So, you know, when we're saying, oh, is it a particular sector, or it's particularly for finding decision makers or anything else? I don't think it is a particular sector. I think it's about being able to find people and talk to them, and being able to take that approach with them in terms of building a level of conversation. I call it.
Darren wants you to show him HGV1 drivers in Hampshire.
HGV1 drivers in Hampshire is what it is.
Darren Ravel, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Darren. Thank you.
Okay, so
let's put this to the test. I think I'm backing Darren on this one. I'm not sure.
Okay, Darren, if you're from Hampshire, tell me a service station in Hampshire where HGV drivers often park up or stop for a brew or a truck stop.
Fleet.
Darren, can you say
conversations would be, have you done your driver's CPC yet?
No, that's absolutely shite. They wouldn't be talking about that kind of stuff. You know,
fleet services in Hampshire.
Fleet services would probably be a bit confusing. You know, I'm look at lorry stops and pit stops, and look at who's checking in or who's saying where they are, or the type of topics they might be. Another real good one for picking up for looking at drivers of a particular type, because all you're looking for is a single data point. I might be looking for things like check-ins. You know, lots of people check Foursquare check-ins at places in particular where I know people go. So Foursquare check-ins at fleet services, for example.
There must be some niches where Twitter is more appropriate, like programmers, like the geek side of IT.
Listen, no, you've got to
design, marketing.
No, listen, you've got to look at when people tweet, right? Yeah. Have a look at when people tweet. So there's two things you can do. Number one is if I knew Beverly Jean Smith, let's go to Beverly Jean Smith who's here. If I knew Beverly Jean Smith was the one driver I could find, right? And then I said, right, okay, let's go and have a look at Beverly Jean Smith's full profile, because actually I'm quite interested in that. Or I've got Susan Avello's open, so let's look at Susan Avello's. I can actually then go and say, right, okay, now I've got Susan's profile open. I can see who she is following just by saying, right, who's she following, who's her followers. And when I start looking at that, I get a list up which says, right, these are all the people she's following. Let's go and have a look at them and what content they're talking about. So if you find a driver, you tend to find they have other drivers following them. What you tend to find is they're chatting. You might find that particularly they follow the football, or another one is You know, traffic advice. You'll find them giving, in particular, tweeting out traffic advice on the local radio. What you've got to be able to do is look at your market in, and this is the point, this is the difference, and this is where a lot of recruiters struggle, is you need to be laterally thinking. When you're sourcing, you're searching for people, not for CVs. Right? That's the big difference. So I'm searching for I'm looking at it and saying, right, who do I know? If I know 5 lorry drivers from Hampshire, let's go and have a look at all the people they're connected with, and let's look at the things they're talking about, and let's go and explore those conversations. Because once I have a conversation to search for, let's go check it. And then once I check for that stuff, suddenly I begin to be able to find what people are talking about. It's kind of like being able to have a filter to go in a network meeting and filter down to the conversations that you actually want, find the people that you want to talk to. But yeah, we could find, you know, if we knew the right location, if we knew the context of what we were searching for, try it yourself, Darren. Search for check-ins at a truck stop where the drivers go. Check a few of the candidates you've got who are drivers. Find out how many search for them in Twitter, see who's got a Twitter account, see who they're connected to, who they follow to. They're likely to follow each other because they'll tweet each other at night. 2 things you've got to remember about Twitter is it's a downtime and mobile occupation. So it tends to be very busy in the travelling times, in the park up times. Between you get a lot of content to search in between, particularly in the evening between 4:30 and 9:45 at night. Most people are tweeting while they're sitting on the sofa doing something else. So it's pretty easy for that. What other questions have we got in there?
Got one from Richard. Are you seeing third-party recruiting firms making this work? If so, are they using a dedicated person to manage this?
There's 2 balances. From a marketing point of view, a dedicated person could be quite useful. I think there are some third-party recruitment firms who do this well. The majority of them not, which is great for the people who don't, because it's not obvious. It's not a very simple data to search. It's not a LinkedIn where all your ducks are lined up in a row, and you can go in and just spam out messages and hope some of it falls in the right place. It's not a source and spray channel. What it is being able to have that second thought of how do I find the audience and how do I connect with the people actually I want to reach. Let's look at their content, let's look at the common conversations, let's look at what they're talking about, and let's build a circle around that, and let's just start talking to people and see where it goes. I think for a lot of the third-party recruiters, the problem is really, unless the conversations the individual recruiters are having are very logically about business, a canvas call or or that kind of thing. But if they're not doing it that way, if it's not very logically about business, they're getting told, "Oh, well, you're wasting your time." You know, when you've got the leader of one of the main trade associations standing up at an event and saying recruiters should never tweet, you know, kind of it's dinosaur thoughts.
Do you know any agencies in particular that are doing this very well, Bill?
Well, there's a lot. You know, there's a lot of people. You know, we know it's always worth looking at what Steve Ward does at Cloud9. There's a whole number of others who actually do it very well. What you tend to find is the people who do it. Well, you get the agency business. The people who do it well don't tell anyone. You know, because the last thing you want to do is. Yeah, Steve's a different kind of animal. You know, Elkie does it very well at prospectus in the IT market in terms of tweeting and finding people and talking to them. But sourcers do very well at finding people, and you might contact them in a completely different channel in a completely different way. You know, there's a lot of people who.
I'd like to see a large agency do this and see how.
Well, Randstad. There are sections of Randstad, in particular SourceRight, that do it particularly well from a sourcing point of view, as they do all social media. You know, that's globally driven by Glenn Cathy. So SourceRight do a great name. Elkie's username is @Elkie Holland.
And Steve's at Cloud9.
Or at Prospectus IT.
I think Steve
at
is
Cloud9
at
Rec.
Cloud9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But one
so
of the
you know
things
you can start.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Mark.
shoot.
Yeah, one of the things I was just going to share, we're talking about, you know, how can recruitment companies really sort of embrace this technology and introduce it to their business? I mean, I think I'm probably quite typical of, you know, most recruitment business owners that worry that if they give too much license to their staff to go and use social media, that it subsequently gets abused. I mean,
Okay, well, so are we basically saying, Mark, and it's quite honest of you to say that you, as a typical agency owner, you don't trust your employees?
Well, I've got hard evidence to prove that my staff do occasionally, from time to time, and they're a pretty dedicated bunch, and I highly respect them. But from time to time, they are tempted into doing their own stuff, even in LinkedIn and Facebook.
I don't disagree with that at all, Mark. I think ultimately what we do, and this is a big problem for recruitment businesses. So I'm honestly not trying to single you out and say you're the bad guy.
Well, I think we're quite more flexible than most, actually. But,
yeah, right. So what we're looking at is ultimately we should judge people on outputs rather than inputs. So on results, and you'll get some people who are brilliant. And I can remember this. You know, when I started out in recruitment, I could do a lot of business networking in a pub, going and having a drink with people, spending time out, all the rest of it. And I was cut a lot of leeway to go and do that because I delivered results and placements. And other people were told, no, you can't really do that because Bill does it because he does it well. So I think ultimately what we have to do is we have to judge people by results, because it's very hard to say, actually. This is one of the complications for people in terms of social networking. It's very hard to say what is a waste of time, because if I'm talking to somebody about factor or
Bill, you're breaking up there. Could you just say that again?
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm chatting with someone about the X Factor on a Friday night or during the day, if I'm talking to somebody about what was on television last night, about the football match last night, all the rest of it, it's very Aaron, I've kind of probably got to disagree with you on your comment, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to you on it in a minute, and I'll explain why. But I just really want to answer Mark's question. I think what happens.
What was that? What was that comment?
I think what happens is we don't pick up the return on irrelevance, which is, you know, when you go and see customers or candidates who you know, the conversation is very informal. Very little of it is about jobs or work. When it goes online, we think, right, every conversation we have, everything we talk about has to be professional. Anything I'm talking to somebody about which strengthens and builds my relationship is a good thing. And judge people by results. If they make placements, you know, that's fantastic. Do it any way you want. If you don't make placements, you get fired. You know, I don't think too much in the agency area has dealt with that. Aaron, dedicated response person to treat leads and mentions like a trouble ticket, reply fast and on message. I hear what you're saying on there. You can get back quick. I think it's much easier, you know, if you look at it an engagement channel, you look at it as a means of saying, well, we talk to people. You don't need a dedicated person necessarily to do that in the way that, say, customer service does. You just make what you're doing is, well, it's not the ultimate thing. You're offering your candidates every channel to engage with. So if they like Facebook, they want to go Facebook, they can talk to you. If they like Twitter, they can tweet to you. If they like LinkedIn, they can go for a more formal approach. It's making sure we're doing everything, but more importantly for me, sourcing and finding people, finding what they're interested in and profiling them is easier in Twitter than anywhere else, because it's the most public information. It's the easiest place for me to get to know people. So if I can find people and profile them, I might not ever tweet them. I might use a different approach. It might be an email or pick the phone up and talk to them or do any of that stuff.
That's a good point, actually.
Louis, what else?
That's a good point. Everything on Twitter is public. I mean, 99% of people are public profiles, aren't they?
More so than any other channel.
You don't need to be connected to see their content. It's all out there.
And you don't need it.
So the point I was leading up to earlier was, I think that we are representative of the majority of the recruitment marketplace. It's not so much a lack of trust in individuals. And I saw something just pop up a second ago. I think somebody just posted a comment to say it's a lack of trust in the process. You know, and there's a learning curve with these sort of things. I mean, I've learned a huge amount today, and something I'm going to share is something that we do that works very effectively for us, is that we have a full-time dedicated marketing person who's come in here on an internship. We've had about 6 of these people now, and what we're doing is we're taking somebody straight from university. They're very accustomed to using the social media platforms, and we can coach them in a few of the things that we want to do, and we can use them to go and trial things. And I've got Christine, as you guys have met before, well, certainly online anyway, working with my guys here at F10, try and help them establish their networks on all the channels and to use the channels more effectively. But what we'll probably do here is we'll probably get her to set somebody up with a TweetDeck account, and we'll actually trial this and then get a proof of concept that we can then roll out across the business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's 2 things which I think, you know, with the agencies, with the recruitment companies that I advise and speak to, that I talk about, and that's 2 hours a day networking time, right, which is really a sourcing. So, and there's 2 things we want to do with that. One is to be able to, Twitter's the best place for content, to be able to stay current with the market and see what's going on. And the other one is just to talk to the people we're connected with, whether they're already candidates, clients. Go comment on clients. You know, go comment on clients' blogs. Clients are blogging all the time. Go comment on their stuff. Pick up their updates from LinkedIn. Go back and do that. To actually spend time networking, and the sales follow. You know, if you believe, if you have a network, you have a net worth. That's your real value. Everybody wants to buy. Nobody wants to be sold to these days. So it needs a very different, different kind of approach, and it needs plenty of trust to let people get on with it. So, Louis, what else from you? We're coming towards the end of the hour. So, what other questions or comments do we have?
Oh, someone's enjoying the live show. Thank you, Sherry.
That's good to know. That's good. That's good to know.
There's someone there. I was just thinking about the difference between a company Twitter account and a personal Twitter account. I guess we're talking about here recruiters having their own individual accounts. Yeah,
well, I think there's a few things you've got to recognise with that, and that's that most people are live on Twitter outside of traditional office hours. You know, so if you're going to hire someone to do your Twitter, don't hire them 9 to 5. Or if you're going to ask somebody to use Twitter to engage, don't ask them to do it more than 9 to 5. And if you're going to really get involved in building these channels, you need to have mobile optimized website and technology for people to communicate with you, because
I was going to be home half an hour ago. So.
Right, you know, 90% of what people are doing, and Mrs. Welcomme will be most unhappy. No, she'll be tweeting you in a minute, or poking you on Facebook, one of the two. 90% of Twitter content of tweets are posted from mobile devices. So if you're replying, you're sending out links and everything else that's taking people not to a mobile device, then you're losing the game. If you are not live in the hours when people are on mobile devices, remember the golden hours. We've talked about this before on this show. The golden hours for when people are live and when they want to talk to you are between about 6:20 in the morning and 9:15. There's a little jump up again between about 10:45 and 11:20, when people used to have their fag or cigarette break, I should say, because we've got some Americans listening in. When people used to have their cigarette break, now they have a Facebook break where they're checking in on their mobile and seeing what's going on and checking in with their friends. Between the hours of about 20 to 12 and 2:25 is when people are live again. And then from about 4:40 till 9:30 at night is when people want to be live on Twitter. So if you want to be engaging with people, engaging with your candidates and everything else, that's the time you need to do it, not a traditional 9 to 5. And you're probably going to be doing it from home, which means, you know, as a recruitment model, you need to have a look at whether you have a model and hours and a way of working and a level of trust which enables people to do that. The other thing I think, which is a big problem for a lot of third-party recruitment companies, is the level of trust to allow an individual recruiter to build themselves into a bigger brand than perhaps the company brand, which happens very quickly in social media. And that perhaps is the topic for another show, maybe even next week. So, Mark, I hope that was useful and gave you a few ideas. Louis, we're coming to the end. Anything you want to say to sum up, Louis, just to close things down?
Not really. I think we've covered it all, really. I mean, thank you both for coming. I'd be interested to hear at some point you go into a bit more detail about the actual processes involved. I think Mark was trying to hint at that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear from Mark if they do trial a few recruiters on some Twitter accounts to see how that went.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd be interested to give you some feedback on how easy we find it to engage with TweetDeck for the first time, and to try and put together some of this advice that you've given us to create these columns. I mean, I think the way that we'll do it is I'll pick one person that works a specific vertical, and we'll go and explore and find some people, probably from LinkedIn, populate that column, track them, see what conversations are coming up, and see if we can actually get some real return on investment. So we can actually
What other useful way you can do it, Mark, is if you take all of the email addresses of your candidates out of your ATS, put them into Twitter, and it'll give you back the Twitter accounts of the candidates you already have who are on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you've already got 30,000 candidates divided in some way, already segmented, you're going to get out of that probably 20,000 Twitter accounts.
Recruitment technology will hopefully be doing a lot of this for you at some point in the next few years. So
there's always an app for everything.
I mean, one last thing. I mean, I came here with a couple of questions in mind, and one was I was going to ask you if there was any evidence that candidates actually want to be communicated to as a candidate on Twitter, but I think we dealt with that to a degree, because I think we've got to tease them into the conversation and build the relationship first. And the other one was, are candidates actually paying any attention to job information that's on Twitter? But part of the same question, I guess. But the
answer is largely the second largest search on Twitter is for jobs. This is globally, you know, and jobs, not job, so jobs with an S. That's the second largest search. So people are going into Twitter as searchers and searching for job content, even when they're not looking. You know, and that's the active searching candidate. They also come up in Google searches, fairly well indexed in Google searches. But I think more importantly, it's not a case of looking at. It's not a case of. It's not actually a case. You know, right, I can see that. Yeah, Richard's made placements from ads on Twitter, so there is room for doing that. But the other point is, you know, engaging with your actual potential candidate base, your potential client base, and look at them as people rather than candidates and clients. It's that basis that gets people to buy from you and make placements. And I think it's like anything, you know, people want to tweet with anyone. What they don't want to do is just talk to you about work. That's kind of like life. We shouldn't believe because it's on Twitter, it's something different. Not to
go on, but the way we're approaching it, I know obviously we're dealing with recruiters rather than trying to recruit candidates, but the way we're approaching it is to give away free information, useful information, do these webinars, work with Bill on creating good content, engage with people on Twitter, and then when they come onto the site, when they come onto the recruitment goodies page, when they come onto the webinar, hopefully when they become interested in recruitment software, that hopefully will be on their list to contact. And I suppose
exactly right. I think the other point, Louis, is, you know, recruitment companies, who really wants to talk to a software company most of the time? You know, most people have software, they're quite happy. Who wants to talk to a vendor? Or, you know, and we might go and visit your site when we're thinking about it. Now you've got blogs and all the rest of it. Here we go. Contacts.io. Thanks for that one, Aaron. That's really useful. Contacts.io. Import LinkedIn people and export CSV of Twitter handles that you can use. So there you go. Aaron, that's really useful. Perhaps you might want to come on the hangout next week and do the show.
Where's Aaron been contacting you from? Is he on the hashtag?
He's in the group chat. I've got the hangout open, so he's in the group chat in the hangout, which is the right place.
Oh,
to
there
be
he
speaking.
is. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you've
Hi,
got
Aaron.
that, and he's got his picture up there in there. So
He's
thanks
right
for
there,
that.
right in front of me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's back to all that. It's really getting in and let's have conversations with people. Once they're working, away we go.
Fantastic. Hope you enjoyed that, Mark. It was useful.
Yeah, it was. It was an engaging conversation. I think I've seen a different way of looking at Twitter today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I'd say
still learning too. So.
Yeah, I'd say for everyone, and why I was saying nobody wants to talk to a software company except when they're buying. It is kind of true, but now you've got half the industry engaging with you, Louis, and looking at stuff and downloading things and going back to your website regularly, and that's really what it's about. It's about familiarity and content and conversations. So when people want to buy, when they make the decision, they need to make a change about something, and that could be jobs or anything. They already know the people they want to buy from because they already know them. They already have the pre-organized relationship, and that's really what we're doing. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot.
Okay, hopefully we'll do one on another channel at some point, Bill, or go into another part of Twitter. And
we've got a ton more
to have
stuff
you again
on
at some
Twitter,
point.
and we've got a ton more to do on Facebook, and we need to have some fun with Google Plus just yet. So thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Bye.